I hope so. Hey everyone, welcome to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and as always, my co-host Connor Rebish. We are here to talk this week about UFC Saitama, and I need to make sure real quick that I have set the public the settings on this right, because I feel like I may have left it private. No, I did. I changed it to public. Good, good, good. Never mind.
Are you
We're all
making a sort of are you ever making a sort of compromise when you say my last name, Zane, where you're like, there's two or three slight variations in how it could be said, so I'm gonna like pick the middle ground between a few of them. Because it comes out like Rebish instead of Rebush, which I like because it just makes me think that I'm in a Kendrick Lamar song. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Rebish,
Whatever. You know
Rebish,
what?
Rebish, Rebish.
I'm
It
just,
works.
I think the thing is really that I'm not willing to spend any time on it.
Yeah.
So I basically just trip my way through it each time, and I'm like, whatever. He'll get it. He knows what his name is.
He knows. I don't have to. I mean, what's the point in saying anyone's name correctly? They know what you're fucking talking about.
Exactly.
Catch
Exactly.
up already. All right.
We're here to talk about a UFC Saitama card that I have been publicly derogatory of to some slight hate. Dan Hooker, of all people, got on me over it, called me a casual fan because I didn't love it. And I, you know, I can only go like so far and be like, I'm not a casual fan, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Before like I debase myself publicly and sort of like degrade myself over this sport, but
This is the sport. MMA boxing fans have been saying this since the GGG Canelo decision, but fight fans in general know this feeling of just being like battered housewives who just like have no choice but to keep coming back. Like this terrible abusive relationship we have with this sport, it just shames us and makes us look like fools and makes us sad all the time.
yeah. So I still think that this is an entirely subpar offering from the UFC.
Yeah.
And
The very best thing you can say about it is that if you have literally nothing else to do, that it will probably have no shortage of competitive fights, even if the level of technique is not very high. But the real thing that makes this card not stand out is, as you've kind of alluded to, is the fact there's just not enough weight to anything. There's no momentum.
yeah,
We were saying this before. This card is stagnant. There is nobody you could see winning a fight here and going on into contention, but for the two ladies who are already contenders in the
yeah,
women's strawweight fight. And aside from that, it's an eddy. The current is rushing past in all the other events, but for this one, it stands still, and we
yeah.
just get to see
It
weird
stands
Japan
still,
fights.
and then there aren't, other than Goodell. Usually, if the current's going to stand still for me, like we've got some cards. We had a card last week, the Rockhold Branch card that had a fight on it like Anthony Smith, Hector Lombard, or uh, you know, not a lot. But like okay, like Uriah Hall, Christoph Yatko was on that card.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony Smith, Hector Lombard, and these are relatively high level action fighters, guys who have had a lot of years and a lot of experience and honed their technique over a long time to be relatively like action fighters. I'm at least interested in watching their action. On this card, there's not even a lot of that.
Yeah.
Like there aren't even a lot of high level action fighters in Stasis where I'm like,
No, there's no like Jim Miller versus Thiago Alves where you're like, I
exactly.
know this doesn't do anything for anybody, but I'm very interested in seeing it because I know these guys and I know what kind of fight they're going to put on. Instead,
It says it's Shinsho Anzai and Luke Jumo.
yeah,
Like,
the difference between a Miller Lozon 2, a fight that doesn't need to happen but everyone enjoys seeing, and Takanori Gomi versus Dong Hyun Kim. Like, which of those fights needs to happen more? There's
yeah.
no question.
So that's a lot of my beef with this card. It's loaded with the lower ebb of UFC talent, top to bottom, battling it out for nothing in particular. And
We can hope that it'll be fun.
Yeah, we can hope it'll be fun. If you show up for it, great. It's the kind of card I would just DVR and go out on Friday night, watch it on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
The
Or not,
Struve Volkov card, which was also abominable on paper, that was made me happy because it was a morning. I got to wake up, have some coffee, watch some fights, and I can always do that.
It's a perfect kind of card to watch like the second day on Fight Pass when the markers are on. So like you can tell which fights are going to have finishes or lots of exchanges and which aren't. And if one has like no markers and it goes all 3 rounds, you might feel okay being like, I'll watch the next one. You don't need to see any of these fights.
So,
let's dive in, I guess. We've spent so much time waffling trying to avoid.
I had to get that out of there because I don't want to, like, it's one of the things I can justify this. I'm not just like, this is a bad card.
No one should call you out for hating on this of all UFC cards. Like, come on.
So let's jump into the bottom. Welterweight bout, Daichi Abe, Hyungyu Lim. Tell me about it.
One of many fights in this card where there's not enough to go on to really make a confident call. But as with a lot of these, that goes against the debuting fighter, I would say. Daichi Abe looks like a good counterpuncher with no defense. So that could mean this is an amazing fight if he can take Hyungyu Lim's shots. Hyungyu Lim can definitely be hit on the way in and basically at every other time. So somebody who's willing to plant their feet or take a pivot and hit him as he attacks could find some openings. But if you're going to do that while also leaving your own chin hanging, I would expect the size and the power of Hyungyu Lim to come in handy there. So I'm going to go with Lim by first round KO.
Yeah, Abe's kind of weird in that he's a really slow starter who gets early knockouts.
Yeah, because people think like they start hitting him and then they keep hitting him and then he just like boop, catches them on the ear as they're hitting him. And they go down. Yeah.
It's fun to me. It's interesting in that it's the prototypical Japanese fighter against the prototypical Korean fighter.
Yes, yeah.
Like Abe is the totally inert, inactive until he's throwing, and then he's technical, and you're like, oh well, why don't you do this the rest of the time? And Lim is the crazy man, all offense, no defense anywhere, just out there to throw heat and try and take souls before his chin fails him. I'm also going with Lim in that situation. I don't think that Abe can really just count on Lim not hitting him hard while countering. So that, I don't know. It seems like Lim is a much safer bet there. Abe, even as a young, inexperienced fighter, has been dropped several times in bouts just early. He starts really slow. So Lim starts like a house on fire, and that seems like it would favor him. If he can weather Lim's punches, then he could maybe turn it around as the fight goes on and be...
Yeah, stylistically, if Abe can survive, he could actually win this fight. It's not like Lim is an ironclad contender. He's got well-known holes in his game.
Yeah, it's just... Lim's also a huge monster who hits really hard, and he's tended to fail against top competition, including what we've learned about Mike Perry since that fight. But otherwise, he tends to be way too much for people.
Yeah.
Abe is the slight underdog, opening at plus 110, adjusting down to minus 112, and slowly rising back up to plus 103. I don't know. That Lim is minus 150, adjusted down to minus 169, and has slowly risen up to minus 128.
I recommend everybody bet on this fight. I recommend a lot of bets be placed. I think it's a very safe fight. I think it's worth risking your money.
Yeah, bet the house. Bet the house. The only thing I would say, under a round and a half is minus 140. Even that doesn't feel great, honestly.
Nah, not worth it.
No, nothing there. Just skip. Whatever. Welterweight bout now. Shinsho Anzai, Luke Jumo. This should be a fight to make Luke Jumo look good, and if it doesn't, he's going to look really bad. Jumo is not the greatest takedown defender in the world. He's hard to keep down, to his credit, but he is not that hard to take down if you can get in on his legs. Anzai is a willing brawler if he can't get his wrestling working, and his wrestling game is largely based on single legs and body lock trips, which are lower percentage than hitting a strong double leg and turning the corner. Biggest thing for Jumo is that because he's pretty decent at getting good or getting back up, he's only ever really lost to really good submission grapplers who can get on him and make him pay as he tries to scramble. Anzai has never submitted anyone in his entire career, so likelihood of Jumo being able to get back up repeatedly and knocking Anzai out seems pretty high. I'm taking Jumo by KO. Let's see. Anzai, yeah, in round 1. He's been knocked out in round 1 by Alberto Mina. Maybe round 2. Jumo fights at a ridiculously slow pace, so might take him a couple rounds.
Yeah, I'm more or less with you all the way. I think, you know, I like, some people really, really like Shinjo Anzai, and I guess I've never been one of those people. And it's not because his fights aren't fun, but there's just, it's a lot of, he's very much also like a Japanese fighter. There's a lot of will and not a ton of very careful technique or thought put into what he does. And while, you know, I don't know enough about Jumo to say that he's a great thinker, I thought he looked like he fought a pretty smart fight in his bout with Dominique Steele. Like, he stayed, one of the best things you can say about that is that he stayed very calm and composed in his UFC debut in a fight in which most people thought he had no shot of winning, or very little.
He's composed to a fault. And I think
sure,
in the end, like what we've learned about Dom Steele is that composure is a big problem for him.
Right.
And so that was a big leg up for Jumo there, and it's a big leg up for him generally on the regional circuit, but it also, he like, you see him give away rounds to people who are aggressive and can go after him and who have the willpower to stay on him.
Yeah. And while you can't,
to guys even like Vic Gruzic, where you're like,
yeah. You can't say that, I may be dropping out of the call here. You're frozen for me. Hello? Oh God, I can't tell if I'm being recorded right now and everyone can hear me, or if you are being recorded and I'm talking into the void. Okay, I'm going to have to drop out of the call and come back in. It does say the show is still live, but I am waiting for Zane to get back on. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn my camera off. You guys hang in there, and hopefully we'll edit this out when the show goes live, but I'll find out what's happening.